Leah, welcome back to Autism Live. We're so happy to be here with you. If people don't know you, you're Leah Hirschfeld, and you tell us a little bit about what you do, because your role evolves sometimes. Tell us what you do.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure. I can't believe it's our last one of the year, which is insane.
I know. Crazy.
But I'm Leah. I work at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and I'm on our research team. So basically what I got to do is I get to spend my day answering people's questions, and the questions come from our caregivers, our parents. They come from our clinicians, and they come from our insurance companies sometimes to ask, how can we be providing the best therapy possible to the most people possible? So we try to give the most recent empirically validated studies and information so that we can provide the best care possible. That's part of my job. And then another part of my job is running studies to also answer those questions. So run studies, have participants, analyze data, write all that up, hope it gets published, and also come out and talk on Autism Live, talk on conferences about the research to make sure that we're getting as much information out there as we possibly can. So it's a pleasure.
Lucky. We're so lucky to be on that list. And you have a special topic that's of interest to all of us to talk with us about today. Tell us what we're talking about.
Yeah. So I try to come on the show and talk about recent research, something that's come out in the last 0 to 12 months. So this came out, I think, about last week. And it's a CDC announcement. So from the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. And they talk about identifying children with autism. And the big splashy headline is that children with autism are being identified earlier than previously. This is really cool, and I'll talk about it. It's very exciting work. So some stuff like I didn't know when I was digging into this. The CDC monitors the prevalence of autism in the country. They've been doing this since 1996, and they originally were just in Atlanta. They are now monitoring it in 11 different communities in the United States, in 11 different states. So we got Arizona, Arkansas, California, Georgia, Maryland, Minnesota, Missouri, New Jersey, Tennessee, Utah, and Wisconsin. And I point this out too. I mean, this is cool, right? So in the last 22 years, we went from monitoring it only in Atlanta to now monitoring it in 11 different states. But I also talk about this because this is a limitation of the data I'm going to talk about. It is only 11 states. That's only 22% of this country. So the data is not representative of the United States, technically. So it's a little bit harder to generalize, but we're going to probably do it anyway, because that's kind of how our brains work. I don't think most of our brains have an asterisk every time we read this stuff. If it does, that's cool. But so that's a big limitation. And one of the things that I like to come on the show and talk about is, if you're going to be reading research on your own, absolutely do it. But it's a little different than just reading a news article. So any good research should have a section that says limitations, and the CDC totally does. So when you read an article from a research journal, you're going to have an abstract. You only got 2 minutes, read the abstract. That is awesome. After that, you've got the introduction. The introduction is really good stuff. It's all the stuff you need to know before you launch into the meat of the study. Then there's the methodology. Methodology is cool. It's a lot of very detailed information so that the study can be replicated. If a study can't be replicated, that's not great. So you want to be able to make sure your study is replicated. And a lot of the times they'll even say, this is a replica, like this is us replicating X, Y, and Z. After methodology, you get results. Results are very jargon heavy. There's a lot of statistics there. If that is what your jam, you will love it. Some of us don't. And you can move down to the discussion. The discussion is going to translate all of that stuff, all of the results for you. And then after the discussions where you're going to hit limitations. Every single every single research article should have limitations. And I highly recommend, if you don't have much time, and the abstract should also have limitations, but if you don't have much time, read the abstract, read your limitations. You'll get a good understanding of what's going on. If you have more time, intro and discussion. And then if you're just like jonesing for all of it, you can go into methodology and for results. But that's a little spiel. I like to give everyone a little heads up. So if they want to read it themselves, that's how I would approach it. Anyway, so CDC, they collected data in 2018. And I'll point this out for a few reasons as well. First off, it's 2018 data, which means this is 3 years old. Second off, it's really important to also note research is slow. Sometimes research can be really fast. It was incredibly fast during everything that happened in 2020, but it is really slow. So it's something that, Shannon, you and I have discussed. You'll ask me if there's something going on analyzing X, Y, or Z. And the answer is usually yes, but we won't know for 5 years. That's just standard, unfortunately, in research. But so this data is from 2018. And what they did was they looked at their 11 communities in those 11 states, and they looked at 8-year-old children, so kids born in 2010, and they looked at 4-year-old children, so kids born in 2014. And one of the really cool things here was that they found that 47% of the 8-year-old children, those kids born in 2010, had been evaluated for autism by 36 months. Okay, 3 years, that's 1 and 2. Okay, that's fine. Okay. But the 4-year-olds were 72% of them had a first evaluation by 36 months by 3 years. So that's where you're seeing really potentially here, you're identifying children with autism early potentially. You're seeing this big jump. So that's really nice. That's a great trend. Love to have that at 100%, but we'll take 72 for now. So it's going in the right direction.
It's trending in the right direction.
Exactly. Okay. It's trending in the right direction. Similarly, the male-female ratio was also pretty exciting to talk about. They are also, I think, trending in the right direction. For a really long time, autism, at least like when I was growing up for sure, autism was always billed as a male-only or primarily male diagnosis. And as I know, Shannon, you and I have talked about this, that might not be true, right? There might be just a different presentation for women, and that presentation might be more socially acceptable. So our repetitive restrictive behaviors or social communicative deficits might be being really into a pop star instead of talking about trains. Or we might have one best friend, right? So those kinds of things. So the male to female ratio for the 8-year-olds was 4.2, which is kind of what we expect. The male to female ratio for 4-year-olds was 3.4. So we're seeing this go down a little bit, which is very interesting to kind of see also what that trend might look like if they're collecting, 2022 data. I don't know what schedule they're on for collecting data, but if they're collecting it again, it might be very interesting to see if that ratio continues to go down. So that's very, very exciting. There's a few other things that we can talk about also about income, about location, and about ethnicity that they found. One of the things they found, and this is pretty standard amongst researchers, we've found this a lot of times, lower income households are less likely to have their children evaluated by 36 months. So if you're in a lower income household, you're more likely to have your child be noticed for autism by a school teacher. That generally happens around 4 or 5. So higher income households generally have their children evaluated during the well baby checks. And that's one of the takeaways I'm going to also try to lead into here is, those well baby checks are really important. There's this really interesting model that I found called Get Set. I didn't find it, CDC did. It was in the CDC paper. But I read a little bit more about it. Very interesting. It's called the Get Set Early model. And it's a model that practitioners and pediatricians can use to facilitate early ASD diagnosis and treatment. And it works together with the parent to talk about concerns and to monitor concerns. And then there's a triple screen utilizing the 12, 18, and 24-month well baby checkup. So again, really making sure you're going to those well baby checkups. It's a lot, 12, very frequent, but it's really important. So if you can go to those well baby checkups, talk about autism, even if you're just, it can sometimes be hard to identify it. So you can always bring it up. The CDC found that fewer Hispanic children were being identified with autism than Black or white children. Again, you'd kind of expect that regardless of ethnicity, everyone's kind of getting the same identification. I didn't have a great reason for that. The only positive note on that is that usually you see both Hispanic and Black children being less identified than white. So at least it's only Hispanic, but that's not great either. So we'd like to see all of those, go. We'd like that not to be a trend. So it'd be great as we continue on to see that kind of everyone's being identified at the same rate. And this one as well, higher proportion of Black children compared with white and Hispanic children were classified as having an intellectual disability. Again, not great reasonings for that one. Implicit bias might be playing a role. I'm not sure. So those are all things to kind of continue to watch, continue to think about. One cool thing was that non-white and lower household incomes did have a higher prevalence of ASD among children aged 4 years. So it does seem like we're getting in the right direction on those trends, where, again, we kind of expect those prevalences to be the same as everyone else, anyone else,
Yeah.
white, higher, everything. So the fact that they are having a higher prevalence than they did, again, going in the right direction, but we're not at where we'd like to be. But so that's kind of interesting to look at. And then additionally, there were differences based on communities. So 1 in 26 children in California were identified with autism, and that they were the highest, and compared to 1 in 60 in Missouri, they were the lowest. So again, you kind of expect that these numbers should be the same. You wouldn't expect there to be any difference based on where you live, based on economic status, based on ethnicity, any of these things. All these rates should really be the same. So this is kind of also indicating that these communities might be identifying children with autism differently. And there's kind of confounding variables there, right? There's a lot of different makeup of folks who live in Missouri, folks who live in California, et cetera. So again, kind of something interesting, something to note that just kind of be aware of. Unfortunately, those are kind of our realities, but hopefully, again, those trends are changing and getting better. So some takeaways for parents. Again, really go to your well baby checkups, 12, 18, 24 months. Some research indicates that autism can be detected by the first birthday, and the diagnosis is stable by 14 months. So that's something that even 12, 18 months, you might be able to talk to a pediatrician about. And even just mention, I'm concerned. I'm not even concerned. This is something I heard. Can we talk about it, right? So it's something you can talk to them about. There's a lot of, and Shannon, I'm sure there's so many of your shows that already talk about this, about how early treatment is crucial, really can assist in language, cognitive abilities, social skills. So the earlier you're getting that diagnosis, it is important. You can get your child into treatment earlier as well. And then on top of that, the CDC also has a milestone tracker app that can help caregivers track child's development. That was pretty cool. And they have a Learn the Signs Act Early program as well, which provides free resources in English, Spanish, and a bunch of other languages to start monitoring a child's development as young as 2 months of age. So there are some stuff we can do to kind of keep those trends going up. This data is also 3 years old, so I'd be really interested to see what happens when the CDC publishes this again with more recent data. But it's very interesting stuff.
Very interesting stuff. So this program that you're talking about, showing the signs and where, what to do, where to go, this is great because we've always talked about, needing this, but how do parents access this? Where is this? Is this the best kept secret under the sun? Or because I've always said, whenever I speak, I go, where are the billboards? Where are the billboards that say, if you're experiencing this, this, and this, go to this person, call this number, get help and assistance to see what's going on? And there's no billboards yet. So where is this information?
I think everything about autism and diagnosing and treating is basically the best kept secret under the sun, unfortunately. Because I didn't know a lot of this either until I was like, we're going to talk about this and let me research some. So the Milestone Tracker app, I think you can just download. The Learn the Signs Act Early program is off of the CDC's website. I think if you just Google it and maybe add plus CDC, probably can find it.
Okay.
The Get Set Early model, that one I think is a little bit trickier. I think you probably either have to talk to your doctor and have either a doctor that's interested in doing it, a doctor who will research it, or try to find a pediatrician that's doing it. The CDC specifically called it out because California doctors in California seem to be adopting that model, and that was potentially one of the reasons their rates were 1 in 26. So again, might have to do with where you live, but it's something you can at least talk to your pediatrician about. It's a research, there's a bunch of research studies about it too, and pretty clear graphics that go with it that are like, these are your steps. So that's something you can potentially print out. If anyone's interested, or if anyone has questions, you can always reach out to research@centerforautism.com, email Shannon as well. But that's certainly something we can probably help with so that you can potentially take it to a pediatrician and say, I'm interested in this. Can you read up on this and et cetera?
Leah, I really appreciate us talking about this with you because I'll be honest, we've talked about it on the show from different perspectives. We had Lisa Ackerman from TACA come and talk about it from her point of view. We had Dr. Grant Pichet talk about the 8-year-old study, not the 4-year-old study, and Nancy and I touched on this briefly. So I love hearing it from a research point of view because both Nancy and I, when we read it and saw that statistic about how more 4-year-olds were being diagnosed, we said, okay, well, that's great. We're glad that they're identifying them. However, that means that this number of 1 in 44 in California, 1 in 26 in 4 years' time, when we're looking at 8-year-olds, it's going to be substantially, that number, it's going to be lower because the prevalence will be higher. We always have to remember to flip that a lower number means there's more people on the spectrum. But I think one of the major takeaways that we all need to be focused on is that the prevalence is the prevalence. Like, we need to be watching it and watch the prevalence. But the real question is, how, as you said, how early are we getting them diagnosed and getting them into treatment? Because we know that's what works. So as much as we all get into the angst about, oh my gosh, that number is so, that means that so many children are impacted, we can have that moment of shock, grief, whatever it is that you have, but the next moment has to be, are these kids getting services? Are these kids getting help? And are there still people who have not been identified? And when I hear that it's 1 in 26 in New York, but it's 1 in 60 in Missouri, I go completely bonkers when people say, well, that's just because there's more services in California. I entirely lose my mind. Unless you're saying, well, there were more people to notice that those kids had. So, because maybe it's not 1 in 60 in Missouri, maybe it's 1 in 25 in Missouri, and we just didn't identify those kids. And if that's not keeping you all up at night, I don't want to interrupt your sleep, but we should all be worried about that.
Yeah, it's interesting that with California being so much lower, right? 1 in 26, and Missouri, again, was the highest at 1 in 60. It's interesting to think about, there's probably some common ground. There's probably, like, California's probably a little bit overdiagnosing, and maybe potentially in Missouri it seems to be underdiagnosing. It's probably in the middle, but those are very different numbers. And again, you'd kind of expect that to be similar-ish, right? 1 in 26 and 1 in 33, like something closer. So it's very interesting to see the two numbers be so different, and to see if we can kind of get that trend to be more middle ground, so we can have the same services everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. I don't believe in the overdiagnosis thing because I think it's a continuum.
Mhm.
And, I know for years there were kiddos that needed services and they would be told, oh no, the child doesn't qualify for autism. They have PDD NOS. So they have most of it, but not enough to qualify them for the diagnosis. And I saw how the families suffered through that. So if occasionally a doctor is saying, it's close, but we're going to say it's autism because we want you to make sure you get the services, then I for one, I know as a researcher, you might look at that as an overdiagnosis, but I look at that as let's get the kids services. If you need support, let's get services. But
Yeah.
I'm not a researcher. I'm not a medical professional.
I know
so
also
I'm entitled to think of it that way. I'm sorry.
I know in
you talk.
California too, I think they just passed. No, I think we have a lag.
Sorry.
I know in California they just passed a law where you don't have to only have autism diagnosis in order to get those ABA services. So I think in an ideal world, right, to your point, Shannon, you can say, listen, this is what you have, and you can still get the services you need. Yeah, but also I agree. I think everyone should get the services they need. Absolutely.
I mean, come on. Yeah. Because if you know what good quality ABA looks like and what it can do, I don't know why. I mean, I used to work in the classroom and there were tons of kids that were in there that wouldn't have qualified for an autism diagnosis. Not that I diagnosed, but you could tell that they have skills that would have disqualified them, right? And yet they could use good ABA because maybe they had ADHD, or maybe they were just miles behind because there was commotion going on at home and they need to be caught up, and good ABA would have caught them up. So I'm glad that California is starting to look at it and say, if somebody can benefit from this, then, we're not going to hold back. At some point, we'll have to have you come back on and talk about that. But Leah, we're closing out the year with you being on, and we look forward to, I know we're not going to have you maybe as much in 2022, but hopefully we get to still see you from time to time, because it's so delightful to have you on. If people in the interim have questions, where would you like them to send them to me, or do you want to give the research at card address again?
Absolutely. Yeah. Either works. If you're comfortable emailing Shannon, or you already have that, go ahead. She'll forward it over. Or you can email us at research@Center for Autism, and we will take a look. And if there's anything, that comes out that's really interesting, major, needs an additional, I mean, everyone can read research, but if it's ever helpful to have me on, I will be here. So
Always.
I'm very excited about what next year has to offer. And thank you guys so much for having me on for all of this year. And it's always such a delight. So happy holidays and happy new year. And thank you so much again. I really appreciate it.
We wish you very happy, healthy, productive 2022. And we look forward to seeing you back then. Thank you so much. Thanks for watching Autism Live. If you found anything helpful in this video, please give us a like. In fact, make sure that you smash that subscribe button on YouTube and give us a like on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram for important updates. And please download our free podcast wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now. To subscribe, click here. And if you'd like to check out some more of our videos, click here.